Shine and Bright by Jessica Jung. She is a former member of one of the biggest girl groups to have ever come out of Korea, Girls' Generation, and she wrote 2 books. It chronicles the life of Rachel Kim. And the first book is all about her struggles, the problems that she had to solve, things that she had to endure in order to debut as an idol and as a member of one of the biggest as a member of a girl group from DB Entertainment. DB Entertainment in the novel is one of the biggest entertainment companies in Korea. And then the second book chronicles her life trying to maintain her stature as a member of one of the biggest girl groups in South Korea in the novel, and the name of their group is Girls Forever. Okay, so just like any other young adult novels, all the stereotypical elements of a young adult novel is actually present. There's fashion, there's love, of course, because there's a lot of female characters in the movie. There's jealousy, manipulation, as I've said, stereotypes, things that you would usually associate or traditionally have been things that have been traditionally associated with female characters, female relationships in a novel. Okay, so let's get to the good points first. If you take the entire story as it is without having to consider who Jessica Jung is and what she was trying to do when she wrote the novel, it's actually a pretty solid narrative, meaning it flowed naturally. I did not at any point in the story in any of those 2 books felt like she was rushing things or that she was manipulating the characters just as so they will do things that she needed them to do in order to progress the plot. So I knew specifically, it just made sense, one thing happening, developing to another situation. It all made sense and it did not feel rushed. She invested enough time writing about the characters so that I felt attached to the situation. I understood the situation. So the entire thing moved very, very swiftly for me. Which leads me to my next point. The characterizations were good. I understand everybody's objective. I knew their motivation. I knew why they were doing things that they were doing. I knew, and they were unique from each other. I knew specifically the difference in terms of temperaments, the different motivations of the characters. I knew Mina, how she is different from Rachel, how Leah is different from the other characters. So they were unique enough. The motivations were very clear to me. The weaknesses of the characters were very, very clear to me. So it felt like at the end of the novel, I felt I had an intimate understanding on who these characters were. Okay, so next would be the writing itself. It's very, very relevant, I guess. She spoke the language of young adults. I think I've mentioned several times before that I helped raise a little girl, and I could hear her, like the language that she speaks, I could hear it in the novel, which is a good sign because it means that she did her research in getting updated with the kind of language that young people are speaking. Next is that she was able to establish a very aspirational character and a very aspirational life. So she painted a picture. She painted the nirvana of what the life of an idol. Not nirvana in a sense that it's all good, but it's all glamorous, glittery, all the makeup, the fashion, all of those things, the things that a young girl would want and aspire for. She was able to write them very, very descriptively. She was able to communicate the excitement, the happiness, all of those things that girls would associate to aspirational things. So this includes fashion as well, the fans, the kind of hustle that is involved in trying to live this life of a superstar. So that she was able to establish an aspirational world of K-pop. Okay, now let's go to the negative. My biggest negative would be that it felt very common and very ordinary. It was her chance. She already has a name for herself. Everyone knows who Jessica Jung is in the K-pop world, especially but when she first came out with the novel, everyone knew who she was. She was way more popular. In other words, she was getting more press. I think that's the better way of putting it. And I felt like it was her chance to create and write something really unique with a unique twist. And I know that she's writing for the young adult market, but it shouldn't have stopped her from creating something unique the way Harry Potter was really unique. It was also geared towards the young adult young adult market, but because J.K. Rowling was able to infuse a lot of unique elements in there, a lot of unique elements, a lot of unique characters. It really defined a generation basically, and I felt like she had the chance to do it with Shine and Bright. She could have written this thing with a unique twist instead of going the traditional and conventional route of a story of a girl trying to become an idol and was distracted by the usual problems of a teenager, love, having crushes, manipulation, and all of those stuff. Those are good because those are the things will definitely work in that market, but it was just so common. I've read this thing so many times before. Maybe it wasn't about Korean idols, but this is the same plot point that I've seen hundreds of times before in different young adult novels. It has been driven to the ground by Sweet Valley High, all of those, as I've said, different milieu, but it's the same story. So I think that's the biggest number one concern that I had with the novel. It was like everything was so predictable for me. All from the first quarter of the first book, I was able to guess the twist that will happen in each of the character, and I was 100% right. I got everything to a T. So I felt like this is so common that she didn't even bother to create something unique and put a different twist in the story and the characters. Second is that I think she missed the opportunity as well to really paint a different picture of the K-pop world, she failed to reveal the side of the K-pop world that we don't know. And it could even be fictional. She didn't have to actually be accurate to what the real world is. It could have been fictional, but she should have provided something we don't know yet. And I don't know much about the inside tradings or the inside how things happen in K-pop, but just the things that she revealed would be things that we would ordinarily know anyway. So I felt like she could have given some more details that would provide the audience some talking points, the reader, some talking points, some new knowledge or new take or new angle in what K-pop is. How does this work? Interesting things that are unique to K-pop. She should have given those things. She should have included those things in the novel. And again, those things don't need to be real. It could have been made up. After all, this is fiction. But she should have given the K-pop world that she created in the novel. She should have given it a unique element. She should have put in some unique elements in that K-pop world that she created in her book. Next would be the character. As I've said, in the positive side of things, the characterizations were actually pretty solid by itself, but the characters were so weak. All of the characters were so weak. And I understand that I've been young once, so I know that you have the tendency to do things that are stupid, that you have the tendency to commit mistakes, you don't think things through. But the characters have the tendency to repeat in this novel, the characters had the tendency to repeat their mistakes over and over and over again. That at a certain point in the story, I just felt like I'm reading a story about a bunch of stupid characters. Like, these are stupid people. For you to not learn from your mistakes, What she should have done is for these people to learn from their mistake, so that the next time they are faced with a different situation, with the same situation, they could do something different, and then maybe that doesn't result to the kind of outcome they were hoping for. So you can better progress your story instead of the character doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. I also felt like Rachel, it was just, there were some things that were so unreasonable. Rachel had been a trainee for 5 years when the story started, and she still felt like a neophyte. There were so many things that she was doing that would have been done, or would have been things. She would have said those things. Those things would have only been done and said by a neophyte. So it felt like she was just there for like a year or 6 months instead of 5 years. It just didn't match up. So is it a must read? I wouldn't necessarily call it a must read. It was, as I've said, in the first quarter of the first book, the first 35 pages actually, I knew exactly what was going to happen in the story, and I knew what was going to happen to each of the characters, and it was 100% right. So I wouldn't necessarily, so that should give you an idea that on just how common the platform, the story is, the narrative is, how ordinary it is. So there's nothing really new. However, it's a good read. Like I would say, if you're in the airport waiting for your flight, waiting for your Uber, or you're in your Uber waiting to get from point A to point B, walking your dog, put it in an audiobook. I think it's okay. At least it'll give you an idea, especially if you don't know much about the K-pop world. It'll give you an idea on the glitter and the glamour of the K-pop world, how it works, just a little bit. Yeah, so probably I'll say 3/5.